You've been lied to about sacrifice. Self-help gurus tell you to give up comfort for your dreams, but they never mention what happens when your dream finally demands something you can't give back. Your peace, your relationships, your sanity, yourself. The Stoics had a term for this, amor fati, love your fate. But what they didn't advertise is that fate doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about balance or boundaries. So before you commit to greatness, you need to understand what the ancient Greeks knew and what modern ambition culture hides. Some prices can't be refunded, and I need to be honest with you right from the start. This isn't going to be one of those videos that pumps you up and sends you charging into your week with manufactured confidence. This isn't about hustle culture or morning routines or the 10 habits of successful people. This is about something far more dangerous and far more real. This is about the moment when your dream stops being something you pursue and becomes something that pursues you, when ambition stops serving your life and starts consuming it. And most importantly, this is about why nobody talks about that moment until it's already too late. Because here's what I've noticed. We live in a culture that worships ambition. We celebrate the people who sacrificed everything for their craft. We make documentaries about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Kobe Bryant, and we marvel at their dedication, their obsession, their willingness to put everything on the altar of their vision. But we edit out the casualties. We don't talk about Jobs admitting he failed as a father. We don't show Musk's children barely knowing him. We don't discuss the toll that 5 a.m, wake-ups, and 18-hour days take on the human nervous system, on your capacity to be present, to feel joy, to connect with the people you supposedly did all this for in the first place. And I'm not here to tell you ambition is bad. I'm not here to say you should play it safe, or settle for mediocrity, or abandon your dreams. What I'm here to do is something nobody else seems willing to do, to show you the actual mechanism of how dreams devour people. Not just to warn you about it, but to give you the philosophical and psychological literacy to recognize when it's happening to you. Because the scariest part isn't the sacrifice itself. The scariest part is that you won't notice when sacrifice crosses over into self-annihilation. You won't notice when you stop being the person chasing the dream and become a ghost piloting a body toward a goal that doesn't even remember why it mattered in the first place. And to understand this, we need to talk about a story, not a self-help success story, not a rags to riches inspiration. We need to talk about one of the most psychologically precise examinations of ambition ever created, and it comes from a place you might not expect. It comes from a manga called Berserk, and specifically from a character named Griffith. Now, before you dismiss this as just anime or fantasy, I need you to understand something. Berserk isn't entertainment. It's compressed mythology. It's a story that understands something about human ambition that most philosophy can only point at. And Griffith's arc is one of the most devastating psychological portraits of what happens when you sacrifice everything for a dream and actually succeed. So let me tell you about Griffith. In the world of Berserk, Griffith is a young man who has one dream, one singular obsession that defines his entire existence: to have his own kingdom. Not wealth, not fame, not power for its own sake. A kingdom, a place where he belongs, where he rules, where his existence has undeniable meaning. And unlike most people who have dreams, Griffith doesn't just want this. He has total clarity. While everyone else stumbles through life asking, what should I do? Who should I be? Griffith knows. And that knowledge, that certainty, makes him magnetic. He builds an army called the Band of the Hawk, not through force, but through inspiration. People follow him because he makes them feel like they're part of something greater than themselves. He's brilliant in battle, charismatic in speech, and utterly devoted to his vision. His followers would die for him, and many of them do, because Griffith has something most people never achieve: absolute purpose. No doubt, no second guessing, just pure focused will moving toward a singular goal. And here's where it gets interesting from a philosophical perspective. Nietzsche said that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Purpose is what makes suffering tolerable. Without a dream, without a why, life becomes what Nietzsche called nihilism. Not just unhappiness, but meaninglessness. You're not just lost. You're adrift in a universe that doesn't care whether you exist or not. But with a dream, suddenly everything has direction. Every hardship has meaning. Every sacrifice is justified because it serves the ultimate purpose. Griffith embodies this completely. He endures poverty, danger, political intrigue, betrayal, and none of it breaks him because all of it serves his dream. In many ways, he's the Nietzschean ideal, the Übermensch, the person who has created his own values and lives by them with absolute conviction, while everyone else is paralyzed by moral ambiguity and social conditioning. Griffith moves forward with perfect clarity. But here's what Nietzsche didn't fully account for, or maybe he did, and we just don't like to acknowledge it. When you create your own values, when you move beyond good and evil, you can justify anything, any cruelty, any betrayal, any sacrifice, because you're the arbiter of what serves your purpose. And when your purpose is everything, then everything else becomes expendable. And Griffith lives this. He cares about his followers, genuinely cares about them in his own way, but he also sees them as pieces on a board, means to an end. His closest friend is a man named Guts, a warrior of unmatched skill who becomes like a brother to him. But even Guts, even this person he genuinely loves, is still fundamentally a tool in service of the dream. When Guts decides to leave, to find his own dream, Griffith can't accept it. Not because he'll miss him, though he will, but because it threatens the foundation of his purpose. If someone can leave, if someone can choose something other than his dream, then maybe the dream isn't as absolute as he believed. Maybe he's not as destined for greatness as he thought. And this is where everything starts to crack. Griffith makes a series of desperate, reckless decisions. He ends up captured, imprisoned, tortured for over a year. His body is destroyed, tongue cut out, tendons severed, skin burned. By the time he's rescued, he's no longer the charismatic leader who inspired armies. He's a broken shell who can't walk, can't speak, can't even hold a sword. Everything he sacrificed for, everyone who died for his dream, it all seems meaningless now. The dream is dead. And if the dream is dead, then what was it all for? This is the psychological point of no return. And I need you to really understand this because it's where most people get trapped without realizing it. There's a concept in psychology called the sunk cost fallacy. It's the tendency to continue investing in something because you've already invested so much that stopping would mean admitting it was all for nothing. Gamblers do this. They keep betting because they've already lost so much that winning becomes the only way to make the losses meaningful. Relationships do this. People stay in toxic situations for years because leaving would mean admitting they wasted all that time. But with dreams, with ambition, it goes even deeper because you haven't just invested time or money. You've invested your identity. You've sacrificed relationships, opportunities, parts of yourself. You've built your entire sense of who you are around this vision of who you'll become. And if the dream dies, what's left? Who are you without it? Griffith reaches this moment in that torture chamber. He's already sacrificed so many lives for his kingdom. Hundreds of men and women who believed in him, who died believing their deaths served something greater. To give up now, to accept that it was all meaningless suffering, that's a psychic death worse than physical death. So when the opportunity comes, when supernatural beings called the God Hand offer him a choice, stay broken or sacrifice what remains of his humanity to transcend and finally seize his kingdom, he doesn't hesitate. This is the eclipse. The moment where Griffith sacrifices every member of the Band of the Hawk in a ritual that transforms him into Femto, a godlike being of immense power. His friends, his followers, the people who loved him, all of them consumed by demons while he watches, while he permits it, while he chooses his dream over their lives. And the worst part, the part that makes this such a devastating psychological portrait, is that Griffith doesn't regret it. Even as Femto, even with full awareness of what he's done, he believes he made the only choice that mattered. Because in his mind, the dream was always worth more than the dreamer. The kingdom was always worth more than the man who wanted it. Now I know what you might be thinking. This is fantasy. This is extreme. This is a demon sacrifice in a fictional world. What does this have to do with real life? And that's exactly the wrong question. Because Griffith isn't a character study. He's a mythological pattern. And this pattern repeats throughout human history in every genius who self-destructs, every revolutionary who becomes a tyrant, every artist who creates masterpieces while their personal life crumbles into dust. Think about Vincent van Gogh, a man who gave everything to his art, who painted with such desperate intensity that he'd forget to eat, forget to sleep, forget to maintain any semblance of normal human functioning. He created some of the most beautiful paintings in human history, and he died believing he was a failure, alone, mentally tormented, having sold exactly one painting in his lifetime. He sacrificed his mental health, his relationships, his financial security, his sanity, and for what? For paintings that the world would only appreciate after he was gone. He never got to enjoy his own success. He paid the price, achieved the greatness, and died without ever knowing it mattered. Or think about Nikola Tesla, a man who literally invented the foundations of our modern electrical grid. AC current, the Tesla coil, wireless transmission. The man was a genius, decades ahead of his time. And he died alone in a New York hotel room, in love with a pigeon, penniless, despite having patents that should have made him one of the wealthiest men in history. He sacrificed every normal human pleasure, romance, family, financial security, for his inventions. And the world used his inventions and forgot him. His rival Edison got the glory. His investors got the money. Tesla got poverty and pigeons. Or think about Franz Kafka, who wrote some of the most psychologically penetrating literature ever created. Stories that predicted the alienation and bureaucratic nightmare of modern existence decades before it happened. And he spent his entire life believing he was a hack. He was so ashamed of his work that he begged his friend Max Brod to burn all his manuscripts after his death. Thank God Brod didn't listen, but imagine that, creating The Metamorphosis, The Trial, The Castle, works that would influence literature for over a century, and believing so little in their value that you wanted them destroyed. These aren't isolated cases. This is the pattern. Greatness and fulfillment are often fundamentally incompatible. The qualities that allow someone to achieve extraordinary things, obsession, single-minded focus, willingness to sacrifice everything for the work. These same qualities make it nearly impossible to enjoy the fruits of that work, because you can't be fully present and fully obsessed at the same time. You can't be balanced and be willing to destroy balance for your vision. These are contradictory states of being, and this brings us to Carl Jung, who spent his entire career studying exactly this problem. Jung called it ego inflation. It's what happens when you identify so completely with one archetypal energy, the hero, the genius, the visionary, that you lose touch with your full humanity. You become the dream rather than the person having the dream. And Jung said this is one of the most dangerous psychological states a human can enter, because you've essentially amputated parts of yourself that don't serve the identity you've constructed. Jung had this concept called the self with a capital S. Not the ego, not your personality, but the totality of who you are. Conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, strengths and weaknesses, all of it. And he believed that the goal of human development, what he called individuation, was to become whole. Not perfect, not great, whole. To integrate all the parts of yourself, including the parts you'd rather not acknowledge. But ego inflation is the opposite of this. It's when you identify with only the inflated, grandiose parts. The artist who believes they're too sensitive for normal relationships. The entrepreneur who believes they're too driven for work-life balance. The genius who believes they're too intelligent to follow social norms. What they're really doing is cutting off parts of themselves that would create friction with their self-image. They're choosing the dream over wholeness. And Jung warned that this path doesn't lead to transcendence. It leads to fragmentation. You don't become more than human. You become less than human. A fragment of a person organized entirely around one overvalued goal. And this is exactly what happened to Griffith. He didn't integrate his shadow, his capacity for ruthlessness, his fear of inadequacy, his need for control. He just fed it. He let it grow until it consumed everything else. When his body was broken and his dream seemed impossible, his ego had nowhere to go. He couldn't accept failure, because failure would mean confronting all the parts of himself he'd been avoiding. His vulnerability, his dependence on others, his fear of being ordinary. So when the God hand offered him a way to avoid that confrontation, to transcend rather than integrate, he took it. He became femto. He gained godlike power, and he lost his humanity completely. But here's what makes this so insidious in real life. You don't usually get a dramatic moment where you sacrifice your friends to demons. It's much more gradual, much more subtle. You start with small compromises. You skip dinner with friends because you need to work. You miss your kid's recital because you have a deadline. You stop calling your parents because the conversation feels like an interruption. And each time, you tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself once you achieve this milestone, this goal, this version of success, then you'll have time for relationships. Then you'll be present. Then you'll go back to being the person you were. But that's the lie. The person who achieves the dream won't be the same person who started chasing it. The process changes you. Every time you choose the dream over connection, it gets easier to make that choice again. Every time you prioritize achievement over presence, you're training your nervous system to value output over being. You're not becoming more disciplined, you're becoming less human. And the tragedy is that you don't notice until it's too late, until you're standing in the wreckage of your relationships, wondering why success feels so hollow. The Stoics understood something about this that we've forgotten. They had this practice called negative visualization. Every day, you imagine losing everything you have: your health, your relationships, your achievements. Not to be morbid, but to inoculate yourself against attachment. Because the Stoics knew that when you make one thing, any one thing, the sole source of your meaning, you become psychologically fragile. One failure, and you shatter. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, possibly the most powerful man in the ancient world, would write in his journal every morning to remind himself that he could lose everything by sunset: his power, his position, even his life. Not because he was depressed, but because he understood that attachment to outcomes was a form of slavery. The moment you need something external to give your life meaning, you're no longer free. You're controlled by that need. And this is where the Stoics diverged from people like Griffith. The Stoics believed in amor fati, love your fate. But they didn't mean force reality to match your vision. They meant align your will with reality. Accept what you cannot control. Work with what is, rather than what you wish existed. Griffith did the opposite. When reality didn't give him his kingdom, he broke reality. He refused to accept limits. He refused to grieve. He refused to adapt. He demanded that existence bend to his will. And in a mythological story, he succeeded. But the cost was everything that made success worth having. Because here's the question nobody asks when they talk about sacrifice and ambition. What's the point? What's the actual purpose of greatness? Is it the achievement itself? Is it the legacy you leave behind? Is it proving something to yourself or to others? Because if you achieve greatness but destroy yourself in the process, if you get the kingdom but lose your humanity, what exactly did you win? This is where I think our culture has fundamentally failed us. We've separated achievement from meaning. We act like success is its own justification. We say things like, no regrets, and do whatever it takes without ever stopping to ask what the it is that we're taking. We've turned ambition into a virtue without acknowledging that ambition, unchecked, unexamined, is just socially acceptable obsession. And I want to be very clear here, because I know this can sound like I'm arguing against ambition. I'm not. I'm arguing against unconscious ambition. I'm arguing against the cultural narrative that says sacrifice is always noble, that suffering for your dream is always meaningful, that anyone who achieves greatness necessarily paid a price, and therefore anyone who wants greatness must be willing to pay any price, because that's not how it works. Not all sacrifice is created equal. Some sacrifice makes you stronger, deeper, more fully yourself. Choosing discipline over comfort can build character. Choosing solitude for deep work can build craft. Choosing to endure short-term pain for long-term growth is often necessary and valuable. But other sacrifice erodes you. Lying to people you love erodes integrity. Ignoring your body's limits erodes health. Treating people as tools erodes your capacity for connection. And the problem is that both types of sacrifice can feel identical in the moment. Both require willpower. Both involve saying no to immediate gratification. But one compounds your humanity and the other erodes it. So how do you tell the difference? How do you know when you're building something versus when you're just feeding an addiction to achievement? Jung would say you need to examine your shadow. You need to ask yourself what you're avoiding by staying obsessed. Are you working 18-hour days because your dream genuinely requires it? Or are you working 18-hour days because stillness terrifies you? Are you sacrificing relationships because your goal demands solitude? Or are you sacrificing relationships because intimacy makes you vulnerable? and vulnerability feels like weakness? These are hard questions. They require a level of self-honesty that most people aren't willing to engage with, because the answers might reveal that you're not the hero of your story. You might be running away. You might be using ambition as an escape from yourself. And if that's true, then all the sacrifice, all the suffering, all the achievement, it's not in service of your dream, it's in service of your avoidance. Griffith couldn't ask himself these questions, or maybe he did, and he didn't like the answers. When Guts left, it triggered something in Griffith, a fear of abandonment, a realization that maybe he needed people more than his philosophy allowed. A normal human response would have been to grieve, to feel the loss, to maybe even question whether his dream was worth the isolation it required. But Griffith couldn't do that, because his entire identity was built on being beyond such needs. So instead of integrating that vulnerability, he rejected it violently. He made a reckless choice that led to his capture and torture. And in the torture chamber, rather than use that suffering to examine his life, he doubled down. He decided that vulnerability was the enemy and transcendence was the answer. This is what ego inflation looks like. It's not confidence. It's brittleness masquerading as strength. It's the inability to metabolize failure, to sit with disappointment, to accept that you're human and humans have limits. And the paradox is that this brittleness, this need to be beyond human limitation, is what ultimately destroys you. Because life will break you. Reality will humble you. And if your entire identity is built on being unbreakable, on being destined for greatness, on being beyond the struggles of ordinary people, then when reality demonstrates that you're not, and it will, you'll have no tools to cope. You'll either shatter completely, or you'll do what Griffith did. You'll make a bargain. You'll sacrifice what's left of your humanity to maintain the illusion of transcendence. And in real life, this doesn't look like becoming a demon god. It looks like the 50-year-old executive who has every marker of success, money, status, achievement, and can't figure out why they feel empty. It looks like the artist who created the masterpiece they always dreamed of and then sank into depression because they don't know who they are without the pursuit. It looks like the entrepreneur who built the company, sold it for millions, and is now drinking alone every night because they destroyed every relationship that mattered along the way. These people didn't fail. They succeeded. They achieved exactly what they set out to achieve. But they made Griffith's mistake. They thought the destination would justify the journey. They thought once they arrived, everything they sacrificed would suddenly make sense. But here's what nobody tells you about achievement. The person who reaches the summit isn't the same person who started climbing. And if you've sacrificed your humanity to get there, you won't be able to enjoy the view. You'll be standing at the peak, wondering why it doesn't feel like you thought it would. Why you feel more alone than ever. Why success tastes like ash. So what's the alternative? If blind ambition leads to self-destruction, but giving up on dreams leads to nihilism and regret, what's the path forward? How do you pursue greatness without feeding it your soul? This is where I want to introduce you to a different kind of wisdom. Not the wisdom of ambition, but the wisdom of integration. And the person who articulated this most clearly was Viktor Frankl. If you don't know his story, Frankl was a psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz. He watched his family die. He endured unimaginable suffering. He was stripped of everything, his possessions, his identity, even his name. And in that place of absolute dehumanization, he made a choice that saved his life. He decided to find meaning in the suffering itself. He wrote about this in a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And the core insight is radical. Frankl said that you can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. And more than that, you can choose what it means. Even in a concentration camp, even in hell, you have the freedom to decide whether this experience destroys you or deepens you. That freedom, that capacity to create meaning, is the last human freedom that nothing can take away. Now, here's the crucial difference between Frankl and Griffith. Both faced suffering that seemed meaningless. Both lost everything. But Frankl integrated the experience. He let it change him without letting it break him. He didn't amputate the parts of himself that felt pain. He didn't transcend his humanity. He deepened it. He emerged from Auschwitz not as a superhuman who conquered suffering, but as a human who understood that suffering could be a teacher if you were willing to learn. Griffith did the opposite. When he faced suffering, when his dream seemed lost, he couldn't integrate it. He couldn't let it teach him anything, because that would require accepting that he was vulnerable, that he needed others, that maybe his dream wasn't the only thing that mattered. So instead of integrating, he amputated. He cut off his humanity to save his ego. And what emerged wasn't transcendence, it was absence. A God-shaped hole where a person used to be. And this is the pattern we need to understand if we're going to pursue any kind of meaningful ambition. Integration versus amputation. Wholeness versus perfection. Becoming more human versus trying to become superhuman. Because the path of amputation always looks more appealing in the short term. It's cleaner. It's simpler. You just cut off the parts that create friction, the parts that doubt, the parts that need connection, the parts that feel pain. And for a while, it works. You become more productive, more focused, more driven. You feel like you're finally operating at your full potential. But what you don't realize is that you're not becoming more. You're becoming less. You're not refining yourself down to pure will. You're fragmenting. You're creating a human being who can achieve things but can't enjoy them. Who can build empires but can't maintain relationships. Who can change the world but can't feel at home in it. And by the time you realize what you've lost, it's often too late to get it back. So here's the framework I want to offer you. Not rules, because rules are too rigid for something as complex as human ambition, but questions. Questions that force consciousness. Questions that create the space for integration instead of amputation. Question 1. Am I sacrificing this because my dream requires it, or because I'm avoiding something painful? Because here's the thing. Sometimes we sacrifice relationships not because our dream demands it, but because intimacy is scary. We sacrifice rest not because we're being productive, but because stillness forces us to feel what we've been running from. We sacrifice presence not because we're busy, but because being fully here means confronting how disconnected we've become. Griffith's failure, if we're being psychologically precise, wasn't that he pursued his dream too hard. It was that he couldn't distinguish between necessary sacrifice and avoidance. When Guts left, the mature response would have been to examine why that triggered him so intensely, to ask what need was being unmet, to maybe even realize that his dream had become a way to avoid confronting his fear of being ordinary, of being insufficient, of mattering. But he couldn't do that because his entire identity was built on never questioning the dream. So he made reckless choices. He destroyed himself through avoidance disguised as ambition. Question 2. Will this sacrifice compound my humanity or erode it? And this is subtle. This requires you to be honest about what's actually happening to you. Some sacrifices make you stronger in a real way. Choosing to train instead of party can build genuine discipline. Choosing solitude for creative work can build genuine craft. Choosing to endure discomfort for growth can build genuine resilience. But other sacrifices masquerade as strength while actually making you weaker. Cutting off your emotions doesn't make you disciplined. It makes you brittle. Treating people like tools doesn't make you focused. It makes you sociopathic. Ignoring your body's limits doesn't make you dedicated. It makes you self-destructive. The question is, does this sacrifice make me more fully myself? Or does it require me to become someone I wouldn't recognize? And if it's the latter, if you have to amputate parts of yourself to succeed, then maybe the dream itself needs to evolve. Question 3. Can I live with myself if I achieve this dream but lose everything else? This is the Faustian litmus test. Because if the answer is no, if you know that achieving your goal while destroying your relationships would leave you hollow, then your dream needs boundaries. It needs limits. It needs to be contextualized within a life rather than consuming all of life. But if the answer is yes, if you genuinely can accept that trade-off, then you need to own it completely. You need to stop pretending you're a victim when loneliness comes. You need to stop expecting sympathy when people pull away. You made a choice. And choices have consequences. The problem is, most people lie to themselves about this. They tell themselves they can have both. They'll sacrifice now and rebuild relationships later. They'll work insane hours during the startup phase and then create balance once they've made it. But that's usually not what happens. Because the person who builds the company by sacrificing everything isn't the same person who can suddenly shift to valuing balance. The habits you build in pursuit of your dream become who you are. If you train yourself to see people as interruptions, you don't magically stop seeing them that way once you succeed. If you train yourself to feel guilty for rest, success doesn't suddenly make rest feel okay. The patterns compound. So the real question isn't whether you can achieve your dream. The real question is who you'll become in the process of achieving it, and whether that person is someone you'd want to be. Because greatness at the cost of your humanity isn't greatness, it's just expensive emptiness. And this brings me to what I think is the most important insight in this entire video. The thing that ties together Nietzsche and Jung and the Stoics and Griffith and all of it. Ready? Here it is. The dream is supposed to serve your life, not consume it. That's it. That's the principle that separates conscious ambition from unconscious destruction. Your dream should make you more alive, more present, more capable of joy. It should deepen your relationships, not destroy them. It should give you a reason to wake up in the morning, not a reason to avoid sleeping because you're anxious. If your dream is making you less human, less connected, less capable of being present, then something has gone wrong. The dream has become autonomous. It's no longer serving you, you're serving it. And when that happens, you have two choices. You can double down. You can tell yourself that anyone who doesn't understand your sacrifice is just too ordinary to get it. You can push harder and sacrifice more and hope that eventually the achievement will justify everything. That's the path Griffith took. That's the path that leads to femto, to power without humanity, to achievement without meaning, to transcendence without self. Or you can pause. Not quit. Pause. You can ask yourself what you're really doing here, what you're really running from or running toward. You can examine whether this dream is still yours, or whether it's become something you're chasing out of obligation, out of fear of admitting you've been wrong, out of sunk cost fallacy. out of terror of confronting who you'd be without it. And this pause, this willingness to question, this capacity to hold your dream lightly enough that you can examine it, this is what Jung meant by consciousness. This is what the Stoics meant by wisdom. This is what separates someone who achieves greatness and remains whole from someone who achieves greatness and becomes hollow. Because here's the final truth, the one that makes this all so hard. You do have to be obsessed to achieve extraordinary things. Every person who changed the world was abnormal in their dedication. You can't revolutionize a field with ordinary commitment. You can't create something that outlasts you without giving it more than what's comfortable. The difference between someone who dreams and someone who achieves isn't talent or intelligence or even opportunity. It's the willingness to keep going when everything in you screams stop. But, and this is the crucial but, obsession without consciousness is just addiction. Dedication without self-awareness is just compulsion. Sacrifice without integration is just self-destruction with a narrative. So yes, be obsessed. Be dedicated. Be willing to sacrifice for your dream. But build that obsession on a foundation of self-knowledge. Make sure you're pursuing greatness, not running from ordinariness. Make sure you're building something, not just avoiding feeling something. Make sure the person who achieves your dream will still recognize the person who started chasing it. That's the tightrope, that's the practice. And the people who walk it successfully aren't the ones who never wobble. They're the ones who notice when they're wobbling and adjust before they fall. They're the ones who can hold two truths simultaneously. This dream matters more than anything, and this dream is not the only thing that matters. That's conscious ambition. That's integration. That's what it looks like to pursue greatness through humanity instead of at the expense of it. So here's what I want you to take from this. Here's the mantra, the thing I want you to carry forward, even if you forget everything else. Are you ready? You are not your dream. You are the person brave enough to chase it and wise enough to know when to let it evolve. You don't have to become monstrous to be great. You don't have to sacrifice your soul to matter. Greatness isn't about how much you're willing to destroy. It's about how much you're willing to protect while still moving forward. And if you're standing at that cliff right now, if you're at that moment where your dream is demanding something from you that feels too big, too costly, too final, pause, just for a moment. Ask yourself, is this sacrifice making me more of who I am, or am I losing myself to become something else entirely? And if the answer is the latter, if you can feel yourself fragmenting, if you're starting to not recognize the person in the mirror, then maybe the dream needs to change. Not die. Change. Evolve. Become something that can coexist with your humanity instead of requiring its death. Because here's what Griffith didn't understand, what his entire tragedy was built on. The kingdom he could have built with his humanity intact would have been greater than the one he seized through sacrifice. We'll never know what that kingdom would have looked like because he made the bargain. He chose power over presence, transcendence over integration, and he got what he wanted. He got femto, he got godhood, but what he lost was the capacity to care that he won. That's the price that can't be refunded. Not your time, not your comfort, not even your relationships, though those hurt to lose. The price that can't be refunded is your capacity to be moved by your own success, to feel joy in your achievements, to be present for the moment you've been working toward your entire life. Griffith sacrificed that, and in doing so, he won everything and lost the only thing that would have made winning matter. Don't make that trade, please. Whatever you're chasing, whatever keeps you up at night, whatever dream has your mind in its grip, don't make that trade. Chase it. Pursue it. Give it everything you have, but not everything you are. Keep something back. Keep the part of you that can still feel, the part that can still connect, the part that will be able to look around when you finally achieve it and actually experience what you've built. Because greatness without presence is just achievement. An achievement without the capacity to feel it is just motion. And motion without meaning is just exhausting yourself until you die. You deserve more than that. Your dream deserves more than that. The people in your life deserve more than that. So be great. Be ambitious. Be obsessed if you need to be. But be conscious. Be integrated. Be human. And maybe, just maybe, when you reach your kingdom, you'll still be yourself enough to recognize that you've arrived. If this video made you feel something, if it named a tension you've been carrying, if it gave you language for a fear you couldn't articulate, then it did what it was supposed to do. This isn't about answers. It's about consciousness, about making the choice with your eyes open. The question was, never are you willing to pay the price of greatness. The question is, do you even know what the price is? And will you recognize the moment when the price stops being worth paying? That's the work. That's the threshold. That's what it means to be human and ambitious and awake. If you want more philosophy that doesn't lie to you, more wisdom that treats you like an adult capable of holding contradiction, subscribe. Not because I need the numbers, but because you deserve content that respects your intelligence, that doesn't insult you with easy answers or pump you full of manufactured motivation that'll wear off by tomorrow. Drop a comment if this landed, or if it didn't, tell me where you're struggling with this. Tell me if you're at that cliff. Tell me if you've already jumped and you're trying to figure out how to climb back up. Either way, you're thinking, and that's the whole point. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself. Seriously. Take care of the person who's chasing the dream, not just the dream itself. And remember, the dream is supposed to serve your life, not consume it. I'll see you in the next one.